Maths paper 2 for the matric exams has been leaked. The Basic Education Department said this morning it was leaked hours before it was meant to be written. While the department is investigating the matter, the origins of the leak remain unclear. It's believed that pupils had access to the paper in Limpopo and Gauteng. The police are currently investigating. Well, Elijah Mhlanga is the Basic Education Department spokesperson. He joins us now live. Elijah, good evening and thank you so much for your time. Firstly, how was it leaked?
Good evening, Kathy. Well, we don't know. What we know is that the paper was available to some candidates before it was written, and we confirmed and verified that indeed it was the paper that was going to be written at 9 o'clock, and that was about 3 or 4 hours before it was written. So we knew that the paper had left the safekeeping of the department. How it happened, we don't know.
So did learners have hard copies of the paper? Was it something that was distributed via WhatsApp? The reason why I'm asking this question is because it would determine the extent to which it would affect the number of learners who were able to access it before writing.
Well, it was distributed via WhatsApp, and the information that we continue to get right now does indicate that several people shared it in several provinces. And since we issued a statement, and there's a lot of people who are coming through with information indicating that they too had access to the paper before it was written. So it does show that a lot more candidates than we imagined had access to the paper, even though some of them said they ignored it because they didn't believe that it was a paper from the department. They didn't believe that it was a real paper until after the exam was completed today.
Of course, it's probably going to make it more difficult for you to be able to track down the original source then of this leak. What does it mean for those who are writing that exam earlier on in the day?
Well, right now we're still trying to establish the extent of the leak itself before we make a decision, because the decision will be based on a number of things. One of them is how many people had access to it, and how long did they have it, and how many provinces are involved, and how long did those people in those different provinces have access to the paper. So all of those things play a role in the decision that is going to be made. But there are several options. A backup paper is always available. A rewrite is another possibility if it comes to that. But we are ready, but we just need to make sure that the decision on the next course of action is informed by facts that will have been an outcome of an investigation.
Elijah, the perception, at least from the department, was certainly that the era of leaks is far behind you. You've been caught up in several controversies around leaks in previous exam papers, but it's been about a year or two since the last time that it happened. Where do you think things went wrong this time around?
Well, it's people. For as long as you have people in the system, things like this will always happen, because clearly someone decided somewhere that they could remove the paper from the batch and make copies of it and then share it. Because when you look at the images, you can see that they had actual printed question paper whose photographs were taken, and these are clear, good quality images which were then shared electronically. So it's someone in the system somewhere. I mean, the paper doesn't just fall off on its own from the box and miraculously finds itself in the hands of candidates who are supposed to be using it the next day. So it would have been a person or persons who know how things work, who would have undermined the system in this way. So we rely on individuals in the system, but it could also be the same people who are a weakness. And in this case, we need to find them and deal with them so that we have people who are committed to a clean examination.
But are there any ways in which you could tighten control around these exam papers and the ways in which they are distributed to the different provinces and ultimately end up in your district offices and the affected high schools?
Yes, we have. Over the years, when leaks like this took place, we were able to improve the system. Year on year, in fact, we improved the system. Even with this one, as we investigate, we are trying to establish exactly at what time the paper became available to candidates, because that time will tell us what was happening in the process of distribution, so that we know who is responsible for the papers at that time of the day, in that hour towards the exam being written. All of that detail becomes important in the investigation. So we will know very soon, especially because we are now going to invite several agencies that are part and parcel of the law enforcement apparatus of the state. We hope that they will use their resources to help us. And what is pleasing right now is that there's a lot of people who are coming through with information, and it's starting to show us that we're going somewhere in this investigation.
Elijah, what happens to those learners who admit to having seen the paper before they actually wrote it? And I imagine some of them are part of those that have already given you the evidence that you have right now.
Well, a decision will be made, but if you saw the paper before it was written, it means that you have benefited from it somewhat. I mean, even if you didn't go work out the answers, the fact that you will be familiar with the questions that you find when you walk into an exam center, it means you're already advantaged somewhat, because there will be no surprises for you. So they might need to rewrite as well, like the other people, but I think the fact that they came through with the information, that we appreciate, because when they signed the pledge, one of the clauses in the pledge was that they will go to report immediately any cases where a paper has been leaked. So it means they're adhering to that commitment, which we appreciate. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that the integrity, image, and profile of the National Senior Certificate Examination is upheld.
Do you see this as a risk going forward, Elijah? So what is the likelihood that this might happen again with another paper, especially because you haven't been able to identify the origins of this leak?
Well, it's difficult to identify the origins of this leak, especially in the electronic world where things just spread as quickly as they can. But the risk is always there. That's why we improve our security systems. That's why when it comes to the human element, we invite people to commit that even when there's a gap and there's a possibility for them to cheat, they shouldn't. So we hope that this particular incident will show people that if you do something like this, you're going to be caught, because the person who initially informed us was someone who was asked to assist by working out the question. It's not necessarily a learner, but someone who was asked to assist. And that person said, I cannot assist based on a leaked paper, and I'm going to report. So you have honest individuals like those, and we hope that they will be everywhere to make sure that whoever decides to do the same thing of leaking a question paper, you too will be reported and you too will get caught. So we need to work together and make sure that we stop it from happening any further.
Basic Education Department Spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga. Let's leave it there for tonight.